how does an untouchable political empire just, completely collapse in exactly 72 hours?
It's a great question, honestly.
Right. I mean, usually you'd think it takes a military coup or some massive nationwide revolution. But in Uganda, this past May of 2026, all it took was a luxury car, a 440,000-pound luxury car, and an internet connection.
Yeah, that's really all it took to set it off.
It's wild. So today we are taking a deep dive into the sudden, really chaotic downfall of Uganda's former Speaker of Parliament, Anita Among.
And we've got a fantastic stack of sources for you today.
We really do. We're looking at some incredibly colorful YouTube news commentary, detailed investigative reporting, and even leaked confidential presidential directives.
Which is where it gets really interesting.
Exactly. And as I was reading through this material, I was trying to figure out how to frame it. I want you to imagine pulling a single loose thread on a sweater, right?
Okay, I'm with you.
But that thread is actually a 440,000-pound Rolls-Royce. And the sweater is an entire political empire. That's essentially what happened here.
That is a perfect analogy because, we are not just looking at a story about a flashy car today. This whole situation is an absolute masterclass in how modern political destruction actually works.
Yeah, it really is.
It shows how international pressure, relentless citizen journalism, and elite political maneuvering can all suddenly align to completely dismantle a really powerful figure.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the trap, we really have to look at the bait. The timeline kicks off publicly on May 9th, 2026.
Right, that's when the Daily Monitor published the story.
Exactly. They broke the news that Speaker Anita Among that time had imported a brand new 2025 Rolls-Royce Cullinan via London.
And just to put this into perspective for you, we are talking about a vehicle valued somewhere between 3.4 and 3.6 billion Ugandan shillings.
Which is just an astronomical amount of money. So naturally, the press started asking questions immediately.
Of course they did.
And her immediate defense was to just sort of brush it off. She claimed the car was simply a quote-unquote birthday gift from her businesses and various wealthy benefactors.
Yeah, but the problem immediately shifted over to the tax authorities.
Right. The Uganda Revenue Authority levied a 1.2 billion shilling tax bill on the car. And then leaked documents suggested she had somehow entered an arrangement to only pay an initial 100 million shillings up front.
Right. Just staggering the rest in a payment plan.
Which is crazy for a tax bill that size.
Yeah.
But I want to push back on the legal framework here for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
Because if someone wealthy genuinely gives you an amazing birthday gift, is that actually illegal? Like, where's the crime here?
Well, that is exactly the defense her camp attempted to lean on. They were basically like, a gift is just a gift.
Right.
But to understand the actual legal jeopardy, you have to look at the specific mechanism being weaponized here, and that is Uganda's Leadership Code Act of 2002.
Okay, how does that work?
So under Section 4 of that act, public leaders are legally required to submit a comprehensive written declaration of their income, their assets, and their liabilities.
To who?
To the Inspectorate of Government, the IGG. And they have to do this every 2 years.
Okay, so it's not the gift itself that's the problem.
Exactly. The issue is the potential concealment of the asset. In a cash-heavy political system, trying to trace the exact origin of a bribe takes years in court. But tracing an undeclared 440,000-pound asset sitting in a driveway.
That's just an administrative checklist.
Precisely. It's the failure to declare it on paper and then the scrutiny over the true source of those quote-unquote gifted funds.
Right. It's the paperwork that gets you.
Yeah.
Because if you are a public servant making a government salary, a luxury car like that naturally breaks the math of your declared income.
And the citizens understood that vulnerability immediately. They didn't even wait for a parliamentary committee to act.
Yeah, that happened fast.
Just 4 days after the news broke on May 13th, 6 concerned citizens and lawyers filed a formal petition.
This was the group with Andrew Karamagi and Godwin Toko, right?
Yes. They filed it directly to the IGG, Lady Justice Naluze Aisha Batale. And the actual letter in our sources is fascinating.
What did it say?
They explicitly invoked the Leadership Code Act and demanded a formal investigation into the failure to declare wealth by the Speaker. By doing this, they essentially forced the anti-corruption agency to put the matter on the official public record.
The government could no longer just ignore it. But the reason this citizen petition worked so effectively is because the soil was already completely poisoned.
Whoa, absolutely.
The Rolls-Royce was just the spark. The powder keg had been quietly building for over a year. So to understand why this blew up right now, in May of 2026, we really have to shift from the front page headlines to a leaked paper trail.
And what's fascinating here is how the leaked timeline completely shifts our understanding of the whole narrative.
Yeah, it changes everything.
Because if you just read the news, you'd think the investigation started because of the car in May. But our sources include a confidential directive directly from President Yoweri Museveni, dated July 13th of 2025.
That is 10 full months before the Rolls-Royce even made the news.
Exactly.
And the distribution list on this leaked letter is intense. It's addressed to the IGG, but copies are sent to the Internal Security Organization, the Financial Intelligence Authority, the Criminal Investigations Directorate, and the URA.
It's basically the entire intelligence and financial oversight apparatus of the state.
All of them.
The president explicitly ordered a coordinated forensic investigation into her assets, dating all the way back to January 2022.
And he specifically flagged luxury vehicles in that letter, didn't he?
He did. He explicitly ordered scrutiny into luxury vehicles and properties alongside her domestic and foreign bank accounts.
Wow. It is genuinely like walking around with a giant invisible target on your back and then voluntarily deciding to buy a neon 3.4 billion shilling sign to point right at it.
That's a great way to put it. But the text of that 2025 directive actually explains why the president ordered this massive probe in the first place.
Right. There were two main triggers.
Yes. First, it cites international scrutiny. In early 2024, both the UK and the US placed heavy sanctions on Speaker Among.
And those were specifically for significant corruption, right?
Exactly. And you have to understand how sanctions function. They don't just ban you from traveling. They freeze assets, they complicate international banking through the SWIFT network, and they severely damage a country's international standing.
So having the Speaker of Parliament under Western sanctions was actively putting pressure on the whole Ugandan government.
Right. It was affecting investor confidence and complicating relations with development partners.
Okay, so that's the international side. But the second trigger mentioned in the letter is the public anger from the recent quote-unquote parliamentary exhibition.
Yes, and this is a crucial piece of how modern political accountability works.
This wasn't a formal government audit at all. This was a purely digital social media campaign. Online activists and academics, people like Dr. Spiro Santongo and Kakwensa Rukier-Bashaija, they basically crowdsourced an audit of the parliament.
They bypassed traditional media entirely?
Exactly. They used platforms to leak documents and expose massive procurement irregularities and lavish spending within her parliament. They just weaponized public outrage.
They really did. They took dense accounting discrepancies and translated them into digestible, viral content for the public.
It's brilliant.
So you have to look at the convergence here. The government authorities were already ordered to audit her a year ago because foreign sanctions were hurting the bottom line, and domestic digital activism was making the corruption way too loud to ignore.
So the Rolls-Royce just brought this year-long quiet investigation crashing into the public eye.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the moment the official wheels started turning over this car, her political allies did the math.
Oh, they saw the writing on the wall.
They recognized the danger immediately. And a political earthquake happened practically overnight. People started jumping ship ahead of the upcoming speaker elections.
It was incredibly fast. On May 12th, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who is the president's son and the chairman of the Patriotic League of Uganda, the PLU publicly withdrew their endorsement for her speakership bid.
And we cannot understate the political weight of that.
No, absolutely not. This isn't just losing a random voting bloc. Given his proximity to the presidency and his military background, the PLU represents a central pillar of Ugandan political power.
So when they withdrew, it was the fatal blow to her protection.
Yes. The PLU Secretary General, David Kabanda, issued a highly public statement retracting their support and directed all members to back the president's preferred candidate instead.
Who was Jacob Oboth.
Right.
And the speed of this abandonment was striking. Social media users were brutally mocking her former allies, comparing them to rats fleeing a sinking ship.
It was ruthless online.
It really was. And this actually brings us to one of our most colorful sources. We looked at a YouTube news commentary channel called Rooch Media, which gave us some incredible insight into this guy, Jacob Obo.
The contrast between him and Anita Among is staggering.
It really is. The commentator analyzes how he operates, and he uses this highly specific performative modesty and incredibly dark humor to deflect scrutiny.
It's a fascinating...
In this country, what is causing the problem is what people who want to be what they are not. This country, we should be contented. Now, this is my home. I have no fear when you come here and judge me that the house looks bad. Am I coming to sleep at your house? Are we in some form of competition? To cause a change, you don't need a lot of money in your pocket. You just need to have enough. And that was the prayer of one person called David. Don't make me too poor, or I will deny you. Or make me too rich, then I will forget about you. That's my prayer also. So, Honorable Kabanda, I got a call that meet Honorable Kabanda. He's a commander now, ground commander. And I'm sure most of you in this tent, you came because of Honorable Kabanda's instruction. I don't want to say command. And I want to tell you as I give him the mic, it has never been real. It's now more
An
real.
incredibly dark humor to deflect scrutiny.
It's a fascinating political survival strategy, honestly. He leans heavily into self-deprecation, so he never appears as a threat.
There's this clip the YouTube source shows of him in Parliament, completely deadpan, joking that the horrific traffic jams on Kampala's Jinja Road should be officially recognized as a method of birth control.
Yeah, his logic was that commuters have to leave too early and get back too late because of traffic, so they physically don't have the time or energy to reproduce.
I mean, it's dark, but it gets laughs.
It does, but it serves a distinct purpose. It's a strategic use of humor to appear relatable. It shows he understands the daily struggles of the everyday citizen, unlike someone who imports a 440,000-pound vehicle.
Exactly. But the most telling moment highlighted in that video wasn't even from Parliament. It was from a victory party.
Oh, right, the family introduction.
Yes, Oboth preemptively brings his family up in front of the crowd and explicitly jokes, "Let me show you my 2 wives and a small house I have so that anti-corruption agencies don't come for me."
He just calls it out directly.
He literally says it. He's essentially saying, look at my modest life. I don't have a 3.4 billion shilling Rolls-Royce hidden anywhere. Please leave me alone.
It is brilliant political theater.
Totally designed to contrast with the massive wealth Anita Among was displaying.
But you know, Oboth only had the space to make those jokes because he knew exactly what the military was doing to Among's network at that very moment.
Right, the transition was completely ruthless behind the scenes.
Very dangerous. The sources highlight the case of Justine Nemir. She's the newly elected Masaka City woman MP.
Kabanda toddamu kumanyira babaka ba parliament aba NRM. Stop undermining the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda. Stop undermining NRM MPs. Toddanga mukutumanyiira okutuuka ku ekyo gwe ssebo. Nze mubakutya siriimu. Era bw'oba obala abakutya. Tombala.
Woman MP.
And she was technically a PLU ally.
Right. But she allegedly tried to defy the PLU leadership's directive. She continued to quietly mobilize support for Among behind the scenes.
Basically trying to play both sides.
Exactly. And the consequences were immediate. On May 16th, Nemir was having a celebratory convoy for her swearing in.
Yeah, at Hotel Borovod.
Yes, and according to the reports, her convoy was intercepted by the army. She and her husband alleged she was forcibly abducted by soldiers right out of her celebration.
That is insane. Just pulled right out of the convoy.
Yeah. No formal charges were initially announced, but the sources indicate it was a direct retaliatory result of her clashing with the PLU.
So once that political shield was dropped, the crackdown wasn't just administrative anymore. It was physical and immediate.
Extremely fast.
With her political protection entirely stripped away, the physical dismantling of Among's personal empire happened over a single weekend. From May 16th to May 18th, joint security operations raided her properties.
By the Criminal Investigations Directorate and the UPDF Special Forces.
And these were not quiet, polite inquiries. We're talking massive, coordinated 16-hour tactical operations across multiple upscale residences in Nakasero and Kololo.
And they also raided her sprawling estate in Kigo.
The YouTube source spent a lot of time describing this Kigo estate. It sits on acres of land, and it is so massive, with these towering glass facades built into the hillside that locals genuinely mistook it for a giant commercial hotel being built.
The scale of the wealth being targeted was just immense.
What exactly did they find during these 16-hour raids?
Well, operatives seized her personal phones, and they discovered and confiscated boxes of physical cash.
Like literal boxes of cash?
Yes, boxes of cash in both U.S. dollars and Ugandan shillings. Plus, 2 of her parliamentary aides were detained by security forces.
Wow. But the most enduring visual from this entire saga, the image that really cements this story, happened on May 18th.
The tow truck.
The tow truck.
Yeah.
I want you to picture this. That pristine 440,000-pound 2025 Rolls-Royce Cullinan. The exact car that started this whole public firestorm, being loaded onto the back of a police flatbed tow truck.
Slowly driven away under military guard.
It is an incredible image of consequence. But I have to ask you, looking at the legal reality of all this, with the raids, the seized boxes of cash, the abducted allies, and the towed luxury cars, has Anita Among actually been charged with a crime yet?
That is a crucial point of clarification. And it is essential to look at the legal standing impartially here.
Okay.
As of the end of this specific timeline in our sources, which is May 18th, 2026, no formal court charges have been filed against her.
None at all.
None. She has not been formally arraigned in front of a judge. Under the Anti-Corruption Act and the Leadership Code Act, the investigations into abuse of office and illicit enrichment are considered actively ongoing.
Okay, so it's still playing out.
Very much so. We do know that on May 17, under immense pressure, she officially withdrew from the speaker race. She released a statement saying it was to maintain harmony, and she pledged her full cooperation with authorities.
What about the rumors of house arrest?
Well, there were conflicting reports from outlets like Chimp Reports claiming she had been placed under house arrest and her movements restricted by the military, but her official communications team vehemently denied that.
Got it.
But legally speaking, she, along with her detained aides and allies, remains presumed innocent under the law until proven guilty in a competent court.
It is just an incredible 10-day span of history. We went from a newspaper breaking the news about a flashy birthday car to a citizen petition to a massive political abandonment, culminating in a 16-hour military raid where a luxury car is hauled away on a flatbed truck.
It really is unprecedented.
And as you listen to this, you really have to weigh the two competing narratives presented across our stack of sources.
Right, because opinions are very split.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On one side, supporters of the government argue this is exactly what accountability looks like. They say this is President Museveni executing his genuine Kisanja, his no-sleep, relentless war on corruption, rooting out unexplained wealth at the highest levels.
But then you have the other side.
Right. Critics and allies of the former speaker argue this was a highly calculated, politically motivated purge. They argue it was timed perfectly to eliminate a well-resourced rival during a delicate transition of power, using the banner of anti-corruption as a convenient disguise.
Which is a very common tactic globally.
Exactly. We aren't taking a side on which of those narratives is the ultimate truth, but it is important to recognize that both are heavily present in how this story is being reported.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, regardless of which political narrative you believe, this entire scenario is a masterclass in modern political vulnerability.
How so?
It demonstrates that the old rules of untouchability are changing. Foreign sanctions from the US and UK serve to isolate her internationally, limiting her financial maneuverability.
Making her a liability.
Exactly. Meanwhile, domestic civil society, pressure driven by digital activists bypassing traditional media, eroded her foundation at home.
The citizen petitions.
Right. It shows how those two forces can squeeze a politician from both ends. They apply so much pressure that a single arrogant misstep like importing an incredibly conspicuous luxury vehicle causes the entire house of cards to collapse.
A 3.4 billion shilling misstep.
Exactly.
And that leaves me with one final lingering question for you to ponder as we wrap up.
I love a good final thought.
We just watched a physical 440,000-pound car get towed away by the military because it was fundamentally impossible to hide.
Right. A Rolls-Royce draws attention. It needs a driveway.
Exactly. It requires import taxes and registration. But we live in the modern age of anonymous shell companies, decentralized offshore accounts, and cryptocurrency. So what happens to all the invisible, digitized forms of illicit wealth?
That's the real scary part.
If a physical car is the vulnerability that brings down a political empire, where do the truly smart corrupt funds hide when the tow trucks finally show up? Think about that.
Watcha AI News. News and information nation powered by artificial intelligence, straight from Africa.